Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We are going to continue on with Dark Ambient Week, exploring music that is dark and ambient. It's pretty self explanatory this week. We're going to be looking at the artist Aoki Yutaka. The track is called Witch Hunt featuring Kaoru, which I thought was pretty cool because that's the guitarist for Deering Gray, which is a band that I've come to enjoy quite a bit. So let's dive into this and see what Aoki Yutaka is bringing to the table today. So we're in a 5/4. Been on the slower side, but time is really difficult to get a grasp on because it's not a really strong characteristic of the track so far. In fact, that rumbling sound underneath is polymetric against it. The only way I got to it is following this and realizing we're working with 10 beat phrases based off of that beat. Yes, an absolutely filthy sound. Some of it based off the guitar, of course, which is gnarly, but that high-pitched ringing too. There's a lot of spatiality in this track, really allowing it to fully breathe and have spaciousness between ideas, between instruments. It's a very empty sound sphere. There's really big bass drum sounds reverberate and push out, and it gives us a sense of where the end of the sound sphere is. But without that reverberance, it's it feels very small within it. Everything feels very small in the sound sphere. These melodies are interesting too. Interesting melody that, or sorry, rhythm that the guitar is coming in on. Is that ringing again? All right. That was quite the eerie start on that one. Like I had mentioned, time felt really strange up until I really began to feel a pulse, and part of that is because I was looking for a 4/4 where one did not exist, um, and because the key rhythmic pulse was, I think, polyrhythmic to what the time signature actually is. And between the two of them, it was really difficult to find a general pattern to the rhythmic concept, much less a larger pattern of structure. Trying to figure out what our larger pattern was, how many bars we were working with per pattern. But also, our rhythmic aspect of the track was this low rumble. The first thing I thought of was the Predator. that 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 fry crackle. That I don't know. I think I'll just always associate that with the Predator's vocals. Uh, and it was just this rhythmic bouncing of this fry pop, uh, with this eerie music around it. Uh, Very sparse, very sharp too. A lot of the electronic sounds in here are a bit on the sharper side, but cold as far as color goes. And it's just the entire opening is very off-putting. Then though we eventually get the guitar, and it is just meaty. It is this massive sound, tons of distortion, tons of compression, just gnarly, and it's paired with this high-pitched ringing. And if things were already off-putting, they've been ramped up to like 11. During this whole I didn't even notice what the guitar was doing. I kind of assumed the guitar was doing what we heard when it reprised itself at the end, in which case we have an interesting syncopated rhythm. But I honestly couldn't tell you what the guitar was doing there other than just its timbre, because that ringing just, it pulled me into it. I couldn't ignore that alarm sound. but also almost every moment of that section, as short-lived as it was compared to the longer ambient moments, I just wanted to move on. I was waiting for that section to leave, or at least the alarm to go away, is mostly what I wanted to get rid of. And every time I really tried to check in what the guitar was doing, I just found my nerves being ground on. Just really wanted to get out of that moment. To make me feel that type of discomfort through primarily two sounds is fascinating. I was really happy then. We returned back to our first section, a small variation on it, but similar ideas, and then we put the electric guitar back in without the alarm. At least not the same way it was presented the first time. We did have a higher pitched static note at the top, but I don't remember it being as abrasive as the first time we heard it. So there might have been some changes to it. But either way, it gave me moments to listen to the guitar and figure out what it was doing. And it doesn't sound like it was moving harmonically or note wise, just sitting on one single tone or chord, and just busting out this rhythmic idea that the closest analogy I'd say is gent-like. It reminds me a lot of um, what bands like Periphery or Terrestria do when they get to their heavier breakdowns. Just pick a really low note, which they're already down-tuned instruments, and just have that massive weight rhythmically juxtaposed to the core pulse of the track. That's what was going on there. Very interesting. As far as dark ambient, we certainly have ambient sections. This is a dark track. There's a lot of weight, eeriness to it. I'm starting to see a lot of similarities across these tracks, whether they're all dark ambient genre or just simply dark and ambient. There's a lot of similarities between how they're all crafted, but one that I'd like to point out here that I felt was done a bit more than stuff we've checked out previously this week is sparseness. I had mentioned there that that really big bass drum in the third section, I think it was, had a really big resonance to it. And when it was hit, when we had the attack, it was centered, and it sort of just melded out to the outsides. A little bit of a reverb, and probably just the natural release of the attack, just the natural way that the sound itself dissipates, amplified and magnified a little bit, multiplied might be the word, digitally, and allowing it to really resonate out. And through that, plus the, I don't know, the sound on the outside of the track, at least at that moment, was just this one tone sort of doing a vibrato. And it was just really on edge, another really sharp, cold tone sitting out here on the outsides, right? And then this drum sort of reverberates out to it like it's trying to make contact. And between the two of these, we can really begin to piece together how large the sound sphere is. So when these outlying, what would we call them? Textures, tones, pads are gone. When that bass drum isn't played anymore, especially in between the bass hits, it really feels small. We get a notion of how large this song can be. But without those instruments that really showcase the extent of it, all we have are these sounds that feel so small in comparison. And I think that's interesting because it, at least to me, creates an isolation element to it, where I feel very small listening to a lot of this song. I'm definitely tense, on edge. Um, it's eerie, it's spooky. These are ways that I've described tracks all throughout this week's theme. But here they really capture an element of isolation against that horror, against that fear. The rest of the songs are really good at capturing the terror, the eeriness, the darkness of the track. This one makes me feel like I'm alone experiencing it, though. And I think it's interesting. We can also look at the ebb and flow of the track between the quiet intro, rising elements, the big guitar moment. We come back down for the bass drum and pad section. We rise back up for the big guitar outro. We finish the track out. There is a rising and falling. There are peaks and valleys to this. I'm trying to picture that against the title of the track, Witch Hunt. I would imagine that there would be moments of maybe not pure release if you are the witch in the hunt or the person suspected of being a witch. There might be moments of release, but very rarely moments of calm, and they would always be contrasted with the moments of pure terror, of weight, of having somebody hot on your tail and you need to run to escape them, moments of high intensity. But also the feeling that you're alone in this. Anybody who helps you will also be deemed a witch. They will also most likely be subject to whatever fate you are as well. And so nobody does help you. You are alone, fighting for your life, possibly for something, accused of something you didn't do. And that isolation bleeds through this song. The moments of peak anxiety, the big moments of this track where the weight is bearing down on the listener, create highs that when we reach the lows, definitely make us feel alone. And so through that, I think they crafted a fantastic work of art right here. Not particular, oh, and the alarms. High alert makes perfect sense for, like I said, the tense moments of possibly when you can't relax, when you have to be on the run, right? Yeah. Beautifully crafted work of art that I think exceptionally tells the story. It could be any story. Honestly, these are very vague ideas, but I think they work well with the title at putting a very specific story in one's mind. And I'm sure that the sounds that they utilized would evoke specific images that maybe possibly a different instrument, maybe a synth pad instead of the guitar, would not have done. And it makes every specific choice here feel intentional and meaningful, but also open to interpretation, which is the beauty of art. Those are my thoughts on Aoki Yutaka's Witch Hunt. Let me know what you thought of this. I'm kind of curious, actually, just if I could have a moment. I'm curious why, if there was any reason specifically, Kearu is the one who played guitar on this, and maybe not someone else. You know, were they specifically picked because they're the guitarist of Deering Gray? Are they friends? Because the guitar wrist, I don't think necessarily brought too much to the table here. Primarily because they played one note in a rhythmic pattern, which you could teach pretty much anybody to do. um, there isn't anything here that specifically screams, "Hey, this is the Deering Gray guitarist." And if it didn't say it was featuring them, I don't know that I would have figured that it was anybody else. Um, so it does, like I said, kind of makes me a little interested in, well, particularly why Utica didn't do this themselves, and why they featured another guitarist instead. However, I suppose there is some intellect and experience to do with the guitar tone, which is very important. But as I think an electronic artist, messing with tone would be something that I'd expect Utica to be very good at. And so it would be less of a hurdle, less work to do than somebody coming to guitar tone, crafting your own guitar tone, fresh. No experience doing anything like this. So I don't know, I just have a couple questions about that. Like I said, it's not necessarily a guitar part I think would be something that you would need to feature somebody from another band to do. But I do appreciate the use of guitar there. Like I said, if it was done with an electronic pad, I don't think it would have had the same. How much of the guitar tone's actually there? I don't know. I think I'm just kind of going in circles here. Would I have known that wasn't a guitar though if I didn't know prior? There's a lot of manipulation of sound going on there. It certainly sounds like a metal guitar with that knowledge, but would I have thought that if I'd gone in without knowing? I don't know. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Aoki Yutaka's what's this track called? Witch Hunt, featuring Kaoru. Let me know what you thought of this. Put it down in the comments if you enjoyed it, anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said, or correct me on. I don't know, it's a bunch of stuff going on in this track that I probably missed and you might have caught on to, so let me know. Above that, in the description box, is a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Go ahead and check that out. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. We have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC.